we weren't just making beverages though. We were like plating drinks, right?
Yeah.
And that they really wanted to focus on that molecular gastronomy integration, because when you're watching a cooking show, it's really easy to know what a piece of meat smells like, right? When you're watching a beverage show, you really have to create an experience that allows that sensory integration, because it is really hard to know what like a syrup that has agar-agar is, right?
Yeah.
And it does require a lot more explanation, etc.
Welcome to the Nugget. Today's guest is Lauren O'Brien, also known as LP. LP is an award-winning Afro-Latino mixologist. She's one of the owners of Sippany Spritz Co. Her company, LP Drinks, was developed with innovation and storytelling in mind. She focuses on health, cocktails, comedy, and bodega culture. LP was recently a contestant on Netflix's new television series Drink Masters, and she won. We're so excited to have you here today with us.
So, LP, I have a question for you. You are a Bronx native. Like, can you walk us through your childhood? Because that's a special thing to be from the Bronx, right? And
Yeah.
you carry that with so much pride. Walk us through your childhood. Like, what was that atmosphere like?
Yeah, you know, the house was certainly hectic. I grew up with 7 siblings.
Where do you fall?
I'm right in the middle. So
So
fourth.
you're perfect.
Yeah, so it's either, fourth oldest, fourth youngest, however you want to look at it. But my childhood was amazing. My parents worked their butts off to make sure we had everything that we could possibly have. And we spent a lot of time at school, whether it was, playing sports or there for our education. And I grew up in Soundview, but I spent a lot of time in Morris Park, which is where I went to school. We were always busy, that's for sure. There was always something to do, always someone to see. And yeah, it was fun. I'd much rather be doing that than adulting right now, I'll tell you that.
I think we all would. If I can go back a couple notches, just hanging out outside, not working, doing nothing, eating for free and drinking for free would be great.
I mean, the block parties in the 90s in the Bronx.
Yeah.
That's where it was at.
Can you can you give us the visuals of that? Like, kind of make us imagine like what was that like? Because I'm from Syracuse, New York, right? So I can only imagine what it was like growing up in the Bronx. I did spend 2 years there, but I can't imagine what it would be like as a kid.
It was fun. So it's certainly like the movies. You have the fire hydrant with the water spraying. You have a lot of blow up the machines, the bounce houses, right? Well, the block parties were fun because everyone in the neighborhood would come out and they'd cook, and all the kids got to hang out, and we would run in each other's homes and houses. And certainly like tight knit. So all of my neighbors were aunts and uncles, and I certainly grew up thinking they actually were, which is quite ironic. But yeah, we were very fortunate and very lucky. We had a lot of people, taking care of us and watching us from afar, and it certainly shaped me into who I am today.
I'm wondering, did you, and this is kind of skipping ahead, but did you grow up around a lot of alcohol? Like, were there cocktail parties or drinks?
Mom and auntie like to get down, there was
always love that for them.
drink of choice.
Yeah,
my mom is like a Moscato rosé type.
Okay.
Yeah,
there was always some sort of punch that I wasn't allowed to go anywhere near. You know?
You wanted it the most, right? Like rum punch.
I don't know that. I mean, I think that they did such a great job at making sure we were set that I never longed for that. But certainly as an adult looking back, I'm like, man, they had fun,
Yeah.
I personally have never grew up around alcohol, so I didn't get into it much until like maybe college. And, it was like the Greek juices they would make stuff. So when we heard about like you with being a mixologist, I'm like, at what point in your life do you decide this is what I want to do? Like as a child, it's like, did you have other things that you dreamed of before this?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be a cop or a firefighter or a doctor. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just something real. Because what is a mixologist?
Yeah. And honestly, like growing up in a Black household too, like especially in the Bronx, it was like, you're going to go to college, you're going to get an education, and you were going to get out of here. And it was that certainly culinary was not on the table. So I left the Bronx and went to school in DC and pursued a career in nursing. And then funny enough, stumbled upon the beverage industry, but it took a while. My best friend at the time was a server at a bar. And I used to frequent the bar because I love chaos and noisy environments growing up with 7 siblings. And so I would go there and do my homework. But I soon found myself more invested in what the bartenders were doing behind the bar. And at that point, I wasn't 21, so I wasn't drinking. I was just ordering a chicken sandwich, a Mexican Coca-Cola, doing my homework, and they were nice because if that was me, I don't know that I'd be as kind for someone who wasn't ordering anything all night, right? But I think that's where the interest kind of started. I was like, wow, they take such great care of me. They're so kind. They're so nice. And then I started paying attention to what they were doing behind the bar.
Are you enjoying the conversation? Please like and subscribe to our channel. Be sure to hit the bell for notifications and be the first to know when new episodes drop. Please comment below.
And the way that they took care of guests, like they could serve you the same drink and you're sitting right next to each other, but the experience that they gave each of you respectively was still very specific to who you were. And I thought that was really cool. It was kind of like watching a show or, just it was interesting to me how they took what they were doing so seriously and they were respected for that, right? They were proud of what they were doing, and I was like, I want to be a part of that.
I was a waitress, so I also feel like the bartenders were always the cool kids.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, the waiters and the hosts, they're cute, but that's the cool kids. They get to make all the fancy drinks, they making the money. Yeah, and so I get it.
Yeah, for me, I think it really was that so with nursing, I loved people. I loved being able to educate them. I loved being able to kind of console them. But bartending was obviously way more fun, right? It's not as sad. And for me, I think it was really cool to find a way to pay homage to history, the history of spirits, the stories associated with cocktails, and then finding ways to integrate my culture, the things that I love about life, and to share that. So like we got to take pieces of ourselves or parts of ourselves using cocktails as this creative outlet and then leave that with someone and they get to take that with them. And I thought that was really cool.
I feel like mixology, it takes bartending to an ultimate extreme, right? Because it's like a science, it's a chemistry, it's aromas, it's flavors, it is what you're saying, storytelling. I feel like that's kind of distant from the bar.
It's different. I think it's like that with anything you do. You establish that foundation. You understand how to make cocktails. You understand how to define spirits, right? And then you deviate from that in a way that really aligns with who you are as a person. And that creative outlet. So I like to refer to cocktails as a canvas for bartenders because that's truly what it is, right? We're creatives. And it's funny because for a really long time that, mixology or bartending, whatever, call it whatever you want, right? Just do it well, care, have and be invested in it and take care of the folks on the other side of the experience. I think that's really all that matters at the end of the day. But I think that there is a lot to do. There are a lot of opportunities ultimately with making drinks and telling stories and sharing experiences and evoking emotion and leaning a bit into nostalgia, and it's really powerful. And it's really cool. I love it, obviously, or I wouldn't be here, right?
I feel like just to get a little bit more into the difference between bartending and mixology, like I feel it almost feels classed a little bit because I know, like, for me, I'm super into interior design, and there's like a really big and kind of political difference between a decorator and an interior designer. And like decorators are more considered like women. It's considered kind of like a household thing. And then interior design is like something you study. I feel like bartending is like, oh, people pick it up, it's like a hobby or to make extra money. And then mixologist, it's like these top hotels and like worldwide, globally known spirit companies. Yeah. So like, what is that?
I think we give words definitions. Yeah. Like truly, like having done this for several years, I think that there's so much versatility in the craft in and of itself that if a person who works at a dive bar wants to call themselves a mixologist and they come in and they care every day about what they do and they take the best care of their guests, let them call themselves a mixologist. Who cares? Yeah. Right? If you have I mean, I call myself a beverage professional. I think that there are tiers to it for sure. There are the people who serve beers and shots and have a lot of fun doing it and do a really great job. There are people who are a bit more focused on culinary integration and cocktails, right? And they nerd out and they geek out. There are people who really, just spend a lot of time doing research and development in a kitchen and don't have any FaceTime with guests. And so there's so many layers and kind of components to it that I think as long as we can respect the process and understand that it is very different depending on the space you're in, right? Depending on the experience that you're seeking and longing. And people can call it whatever they want. That's truly how I feel about it. Yeah. But I do understand, like, with society in general, right? We have terms. We have bartenders. We have mixologists. We have mocktail. We have non-alcoholic drink. Like, I just think it depends on... We give words power, and I think as long as we truly are going into every experience, like, giving it our all and caring the most that we can, you can call yourself whatever you want. Yeah. And I think that's kind of cool.
I want to go back a little bit too, because we kind of glided over it, but I want to talk about the pivot from nursing to being a full-time like mixologist, because I know there's a story there, of course, and we want to know, like, how did that go? Did you drop out of school and right immediately? Did it take time, or like how did your family react to it? Like, what was the overall process of that?
My parents were so proud. What do you mean? No, they were so mad. Are you kidding me? Yeah, pretty sure mom didn't talk to me for a couple months. She'll be mad I said that.
Yeah,
no way.
I think it was hard. It was hard. I knew the first thing that came to mind was, man, if you're going to make this switch, you better make sure you are like the best of the best.
Well, girl, you did it.
Well, I knew I couldn't go home if I wasn't. Truly. Yeah. Wow. Like, how do you explain to your parents who invested all this time for 23 years of your life and money and sacrifice, because there was a lot of sacrifice, and say, hey, I'm going to be a bartender. And in the Bronx, you think bartender, you're thinking like Applebee's, right? Like, it's different. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But for all the sacrifices they made and where I was, exactly.
They're like, oh, you gonna go to BBQs?
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, I love BBQs. I haven't been
in
forever.
Wow. Never heard of one say that.
I haven't been in years.
Yeah, you know you're from the Bronx when you say you love BBQs.
You left the Bronx when you're craving
BBQs.
But it was interesting because during that time, it certainly took a couple of months. I'd say less than a year. But I would go to work and I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. And I would give it my all and do my work.
What kind of work were you doing?
Nursing.
You became a nurse.
Yeah, I was doing my thing.
Oh.
I was doing my thing.
Yeah, because you said 23. Yeah,
so I was doing my thing and I just wasn't fulfilled. And so essentially what ended up happening was I was working part-time at a bar. And the more I learned, the more I was exposed to it, the less I was doing with the nursing side of my career. I cut back my schedule, and then eventually I was working per diem, which is just on call. Yeah. And then eventually I was like, I think it's time to quit. And at the time I knew the risk was very low because I was so young and because I had just started my career. So yeah, there was a lot to learn with bartending, but I knew I could do it if I focused. And so when telling my parents, I actually was quite sneaky about it. So my parents, my family came to visit DC because I have other siblings that live there. And I was like, hey, do you guys want to have dinner at this really cool bar restaurant? I think it'd be fun. Yeah. And they're from the Bronx. So they had oysters. They were like, we don't eat any of this food. Yeah. I was like, no, we'll figure it out. It'll be great. So they showed up and they're like, why are you behind the bar? And I was like, oh, I work here now.
Oh, wait a minute now. So you just dropped it on them.
Just dropped the bomb like that. Okay. And I remember seeing my mom's face and she was like, oh, maybe it's like a part-time job.
Yeah, like a side hustle. Yeah,
you could tell that she was like, oh, she wasn't impacted. She was like, oh, okay. And then... So following up with the conversation, and I think I was scared, so I called her instead of telling her in person. I was like, yeah, so I quit nursing, and that was hard. It was hard. I could understand why she was like, it was difficult for her to process, right? And so I think now looking back, they're obviously very proud and very happy for me, and I think they understand. I mean, parents in general just want the best for their children, right? They want to make sure they're independent. They want to make sure that they're honestly doing work that is fulfilling, right? And I think that's all they ever wanted from me. So do they still understand what I do? Probably not.
Do any of our parents understand what we do?
But that's okay.
My mom thinks I'm Oprah. I am.
Oh, okay.
I am.
Yo, I can't. Wait,
I mean, y'all speak for yourself.
You know what? Claim it. In the name of Jesus, claim it.
But you know what? It's actually a crazy moment. When you said, I think people, they often ask, oh, how did you tell your parents? But something I actually think about is like, weren't you kind of scared when you told yourself? Because I recently had a student that was a writing student of mine. And when I met her, she had just started law school and now she's almost finished with law school. And she wrote me maybe 3 weeks ago. She's like, Bianca, I think I actually want to be an actress. And she was like, I really like terrified. And she wasn't telling anybody but me. And I was like, sorry, that makes total sense. Like, you're so dramatic. Like, of course you want to be an actress. Like, But for herself, she was like, you know, it's like, I feel like as an artist, there's almost a coming out of the closet type moment where you're like, actually, I think I have to do this, you know? And I think like, I don't know if it's like a gradual moment for you, but it's a lot scarier than telling your parents because by then your mind is made up. You know what I'm saying?
I don't remember. It was so long ago now.
Yeah.
I'm sure I was scared.
Right.
I do think that on the other side of it, right, I think the thing I've had to learn recently, because I made a pivot in my mid-20s too, career-wise, I think what I'm realizing now is that a lot of our parents don't take things serious, of our creative endeavors serious in the beginning, is because there's a nuance of roles that have just, or careers that have just kind of came about, but also a lot of kids are only want to do what they see on social media. They're not really thinking like, I love this. They're just seeing like other people be successful at it. Yeah. And so I do extend grace to parents now when I understand when they're like, what are you doing? Because they won't get it until you're like either really successful
100.
or like you're putting money in their pockets, right?
No, absolutely. When I stopped asking for money, I think that was really the telltale sign.
That's when
like,
it becomes
she's
believable.
Okay now.
Thank you.
She's got this, you know? No, my parents have always been supportive, so I'm really appreciative of that. Even in those moments where it was hard to be supportive, you know, they always showed up, which was nice. But yeah, I mean, put me on the other side of that, I'd probably be pissed too, you know? I think it is cool, though, to see that transition. We have a lot more of creatives, a lot more people, you know, starting their own businesses, a lot more people kind of deviating from the norm and these unconventional career paths, which is cool. It's great, right?
Do you have an audio podcast? Are you looking to grow your audience? Partner with Prosper Digital TV, a virtual and full-service video production company. Visit www.prosperdigital.tv or call 718-622-0062 to get started today.
How do you go from sort of like just bartending to becoming like a mixologist or getting into the science of it to the level that you've been able to do it, which is like globally? Yeah. Which congratulations, by the way. That's insane.
Man, it's funny. It went by so much faster than than I could have ever imagined. But I think it's a combination of great timing and luck and hard work. I ended up working at some of the best bars in DC, not knowing it at the time, truthfully, just kind of being really engaged.
Were you on that street? What's that street called? It has all the...
Oh, no, not that street. U Street. Okay.
Yes, U Street.
No.
I feel like once you work on that street, you kind of, it's like it's the life.
You can take over the world.
Yes.
So U Street is a street in DC that's pretty poppin'. A dead center in around where like Howard University is for folks who are listening, just so you have context. But you have a very eclectic vibe of establishments on that street. And so if you work there, you are hustling, which is pretty admirable. Yeah. I did not work on your street, but it is very cool. I was really invested in making sure I was a good and very sound bartender. Yeah. And so spent a lot of time getting certifications and attending classes and going to conferences and networking, all the things you're supposed to do, but very much invested in it because I wanted to do it. And then once I got comfortable, left my first job and went into another position to just kind of extend my resume a bit, and focused a bit more on management, which was very cool. At a hotel. And so again, broadening that experience, worked at a Italian focus, like a Mari bar. Very different from what I was doing. So intimidated by that. But it was amazing. After that, worked at more like mom and pop style shops, ran a few beverage programs. Transitioning out of that, worked at this bar called Silver Lion. And so it's with the Lion Group based out of London. And they're probably one of the best known
Like a Gucci restaurant group.
I mean, bar group. Yeah. And they are very good at what they do. They are very focused with that science kind of culinary integration. And that's really where I realized what I loved most about the industry was that research and development kind of process, the behind the scenes. So the parts of it you don't necessarily get to see, but very drink masters, right? Like the process more than the finished product. And that's where I found where I was most comfortable, most fulfilled, most excited. I did that for a few years. Then Drink Masters, kind of happened. Got to showcase basically everything that I've learned in my tenure, which was really horrifyingly exciting. And, now the change or the shift is finding ways to focus on this canvas of being cocktails. And the creative kind of element to it, or creation, the storytelling, right? The innovation, the integration of culture, the collaboration with other creatives. So those are the things that really excite me about the beverage industry and creatives in general.
How did you even come across the Netflix series? Like, because obviously I know like they'll put out ads and emails or different things like that. Like, what was that process like when you first seen it? Did you like think right away like I want to be on this show? Or did you kind of hesitate or anything with it?
Yeah, because no one end up on Netflix.
You just kind of I was gonna say,
then it happened. It's like no,
it's like reality
stumbles
TV
into the biggest streaming platform in the world and wins. By the way,
it's complicated. So I saw something surfacing and kind of. Truthfully, kind of eye rolled, like, I don't have time for this. I was so focused on my job at Silver Lion. And I remember talking to my husband and being like, this thing kind of popped up. Like, it sounds cool. I don't have time for it, though. And then I get an email personally, was like, hey, you've been, like, recommended to apply.
Wow. That had to feel good.
Yeah, I guess. I was like, I don't have time for this. I'm like working a full-time job. I had plans on, I think at the time I had plans on really just staying at Silver Lions, trying to see if I could have like a bigger role in that restaurant or bar group. And so, my husband was like, why don't you ask them if you can do this? Because I feel like they'll support you. And what's the worst they say? No. And I was like, okay. So I asked and they were like, oh my gosh, do it. It sounds amazing. I was like, okay. So then when I knew I had them behind my back, applied, we went through the interview process. So it's this initial kind of like submission where they ask you a few questions about like your character, your style, all that kind of stuff. And then you do a virtual interview because of COVID, right? And they ask you questions about cocktails. They ask you to present a few drinks. And again, they want to see your personality. It's a television show.
Yeah.
Not Vanderpump Rules style, right? You're not doing that.
But then they make their selections, and the process was quite quick because after it's vague, so I can't fully remember, but I recall getting the email saying like, hey, we want to move forward with having you on the show. I think it was like 3 months between that and then like the preparation that was necessary to leading up to the show. And leading up to it, it's very, here's the thing, it's vague, right? It's like, cool, know how to do this and this and this. And it's like, know classic cocktails, know how to clarify things, know how to do verification. And it really is up to you to do it, right? But also we were all working full-time jobs. So luckily where I worked, I was in the kitchen as the R&D production chef. So I challenged myself to work specifically with my chefs so that I could figure out like, okay, how do I make, more vibrant and beautiful syrups and more concentrated in flavor? How do I make more clarified beverages? How do I make aesthetically like beautiful plate?
It's wild that it seems like you treated mixology like nursing school, like the technical science that you applied to it. And I think that's super key because I find like when a lot of people just think, oh, I'm going to be an artist, oh, I'm going to be a creative, they don't realize that like painting, sculpting, like all these things have a technical basis.
Yeah.
And I think that's like when you are just like, okay, I think I want to be an artist, usually the technical basis is what gives you comfort in the fact that you're going to do the creative thing. Like, so before you even get to the fancy things and, you know, mixing drinks and telling stories, like you have like a real technical foundation.
Yeah, I had to go back to the basics. And at the time, I didn't think about it that way, but I was like, okay, I have an understanding of XYZ. Yeah. How do we broaden your skill set to be as prepared as possible for this experience? Let's work with my pastry chef and my savory chef. And they taught me a lot. I learned a lot. But most importantly, I learned that there is a huge connection with food and drinks that really do allow me to be a better bartender, right? A lot of that technical application, that foundation, making better syrups, making more clarified drinks, as I said earlier, and just understanding the processes. Obviously, like you saw, we weren't just making beverages, though. We were like plating drinks, right? Yeah. And that they really wanted to focus on that molecular gastronomy integration, because when you're watching a cooking show, it's really easy to know what a piece of meat smells like, right? When you're watching a beverage show, you really have to create an experience that allows that sensory integration, because it is really hard to know what like a syrup that has agar-agar is, right? Yeah. And it does require a lot more explanation, etc. And so I think they were very successful in the way they portrayed those elements and aspects. And it certainly was challenging. But I'm really happy that, you know, I went into that as prepared as I could possibly be.
Are you enjoying the conversation? Please like and subscribe to our channel. Be sure to hit the bell for notifications and be the first to know when new episodes drop. Please comment below.
So you're on the show now.
Yeah.
You win the show. You win the competition, right?
Yeah.
How did you deal with the like newfound like visibility and notoriety that came with the show? Because I know I've seen series and met people who've been on reality TV, and they're always like, they either really hated it or they're like fully embraced it and was like, I can't wait to do another one. You know, so where were you at on that spectrum?
I don't know. I'm still processing.
Did it change your life completely?
Yeah, it has, for the better. It certainly gave me a platform that I didn't have before. I mean, and I think, here's the thing. I truthfully wasn't doing anything different than I was doing prior to the show, but there's more visibility, right? So there were opportunities to do things that were different because of the visibility, which was really cool. I mean, I got invited to participate in programs and activities that I probably wouldn't have before, and to go on the Today Show. So there were really cool opportunities like that. And I'm so grateful for it. I think you can't take that for granted. You can pull the bad out of any situation, but like all in all, Netflix like lended me their platform, and I was able to showcase myself in a very authentic way, which allowed me to ultimately be where I am today, you know, creating these programs, providing these services, hopefully acting as a mentor to as many people as I'm able to. But the biggest lesson was boundaries, man. Boundaries.
Can we unpack that a little bit? Because I'm huge on boundaries, and that's one of my favorite topics now. Therapy has taught me a lot about boundaries, so we love that topic. So what do you mean by it taught you boundaries?
I slowed down a lot. I was a bit more selective about what I did and who I did it with. I said no when necessary. I asked the hard questions, you know. I stood up for myself and asked for what I felt I was worth, compensation-wise. I used that block button on social media whenever necessary.
Yeah, even before necessary.
For real. No, but absolutely. Yeah,
just when I feel like it.
But I mean, you have to. And I think ultimately, and didn't feel bad for doing it, because I think in the initial stages, I was so caught up in like, oh, well, what if they don't like me? And it was like, I have to protect myself, you know, I have to protect my energy. And if someone is so comfortable with disrespecting my boundaries, then there's no reason to feel bad for, you know, taking whatever necessary steps. I have to continue to be in a good place. So those are the biggest lessons out of this entire experience. And I'm really grateful for that, because that definitely shaped me into who I am. The show came out in October. So it's been a couple months, right? But yeah, I think like reflecting on that certainly was the biggest lesson.
I almost want to go back to even before that moment where you said that you were kind of like, no, this is not for me. And then you're like, and then your fiance or your husband, husband, is like, oh no, maybe look more into this. I wonder, because there's a lot of people that I think are just worker bees that, you know, they keep their head down and they're really like, okay, I'm doing good. I'm climbing up whatever the ladder is that's presented in front of me. But then you're given a life-changing opportunity to jump. Like, what is that internal conversation? Or do you need like that support system to say like, okay, now it's time? Because how do you miss that window? You know, your life would be completely different.
Being on TV is hard.
You tell us.
I mean,
it's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
Really hard.
But I think when you're going into these experiences, they do these psych evals, right? And you have to acknowledge that the questions that they're asking you are setting you up, or setting them up to understand if you can, how you react in very stressful situations. If they have to do that, you have to acknowledge that these are very stressful situations.
I didn't know that they did that. What kind of questions?
They just have a therapist ask you questions
on the set
before
you're able
That's
to go on the show.
That's so interesting you say that, because
that's just standard.
No, but because the reason I say it's interesting with you being on a platform like Netflix, which is also the home of Love is Blind. A lot of those people, have come forward in more recent days and say while they were filming, they didn't get a therapist or they didn't get someone to help them. And a lot of them are actually dealing with the repercussions of that, with their mental health. So it's I'm like actually shocked that you said that. That's actually been on the news more recently about that particular series. So maybe because of what happened on that series, they provided that for you guys.
I'm not sure. I have no idea.
Well, Netflix got it right.
I can't speak to their experience, but we had all the resources that we needed, which was great. But again, you have to acknowledge that if that is preemptively like occurring before you're even going onto set, these are extremely stressful situations, right? And so you have to have a support system, and you have to be in a position where you have a good and positive mindset. And it's not always the case, right? We have our good days and our bad days, but you have to take care of yourself, work out, eat right. You know, like it's hard. It's really hard. It's isolating. But I truly think it like made me a better version of myself coming out of that.
I feel like for me, like the hardest part when I used to think about TV is like actual self-image. Like it was a time after like first appearing on TV, I could not watch it. I was just like, I can't watch it. I can't see. Like, did that go through your mind of just like... No, you were really just like, I'm just going to jump in front of camera. No, you're so laissez-faire.
You know, I mean, there are things plenty of people say, listen, there are people calling me ugly and calling me overweight. I was like, I don't care. Wow. You can't say anything about my skill set. You know, like
that's a that's
a lot of confidence. Yeah, you have a lot of confidence. I love that.
I don't even know if it's confidence. Yeah. It's like that's actually truly, especially in like the digital age where like so much of it is like I'm gonna have to self-present. I feel like it's both empowering, but that's also really unique.
If like I can wake up,
especially as a woman, I feel like that's actually borderline strange. Like, give me the secret. Give me the.
If I can wake up and be happy with who I am, and I am, right, then I don't really.
So that was not even a conversation. Wow.
No, yeah. I mean, listen, there are days where those comments get to you, and I still get them. And the block button is a beautiful thing. But I think you can't let their narrative be your narrative was the most important thing that kind of came to mind. The folks who made comments about my skill set, those are the comments that hurt the most. Because it was like, I know I worked my butt off, you know?
Well, it's like when someone, like people that are just, you know, amateurs or just kind of, they're mixing for the little cocktail party, they're Netflix and chill. And then suddenly they become mixologist experts in your comments.
But we're all critics. Think about it. We watch cooking shows and we're like, why did they do that? We're all critics.
Yeah.
I think the best advice I've ever gotten, and having lived this, is like, be kind, man. You don't know what people are going through, truly. And this newfound, like celebrity that's evolving from, you know, reality TV, they have more going on than you can even imagine, right? They're people, they're humans. I think that being kinder is a thing that would make this world a better place for sure.
Well, I also think that there's a huge community that just gets off on being in the comment section and having some type of like 2 seconds of fame in the comment section, like going viral and things like that. I think that's why I personally, I used to have a desire to be on The Real World because that was my show back in the day.
Way.
I promise you. And I auditioned. I did do that.
You auditioned for The Real World?
I did. And I wanted to be on there so bad. The earlier seasons when it was actually
2 reality TV stars.
Yeah, I was like, I wanted to be on that show so bad, but more so because back then it was an escape from my own world. Like I was like, I used to watch earlier seasons and be like, look how they're like interacting with people they've never met from different parts of the world, like just the idea of like this experiment. And so, but now when people ask me like, would you ever be on like a reality show like Love Island or something, I'm like, immediately no.
Yeah.
And that's why I commend you for having such confidence.
Yeah.
Because I personally do not think I could do it. Like I feel like maybe in my 20s I could have been like that girl, but now I'm so much more aware of protecting myself, and I don't think in the like spaces like reality TV they do a really great job at it. Luckily for you, they did have things in place for you guys, but even you just being so confident, and I'm sure having a great partner at home to kind of reassure you as well also help, because there's some people go on those shows and they really lose it afterwards because they think like they want that fame and they don't get it, or they feel really confident, they come out of it feeling really low. So it's really nice to hear that you embrace yourself so much, and it's like, just focus on my skill set. I could care less.
I mean, more than that, I mean, consider this is a very stressful situation, and I went out there and did the best I could. So critiquing anyone who was on that show is kind of cruel, honestly, right? Like everyone went out there. I mean, come on, can you imagine that anyone went there and didn't try to do their best?
Yeah,
that's not the case, right? So I think now when I watch TV, it's so different because I'm like, oh, this, that, this,
shot.
And it changes your perspective on the way that I think I move and the way that I see people. I see them as humans because that's what they are.
Well, I feel like to Keisha's point, like it seems like you're very goal centered. Like you weren't just like, those people go on shows literally to be seen and to be famous. But if you're going on with like, I'm gonna do the best I can, or this is gonna be a career thing, like, you know, it's like, what are you ultimately trying to do with all of this? I know that you have a drink company. I know that you have your, you know, canned cocktail company, and I want to sippany spritz. And I want to talk a bit about that. So it's like, where are you going with all of this?
For sure. I mean, when I went on the show, there were 2 things for me. The first thing was do the best you can, right? So that preparation prior was so essential. And the second thing was, don't worry about the end goal, worry about now. So taking every challenge for what it is. And that was advice my husband gave me, which was I was so grateful for, because I'm a Pisces, so I was like, oh,
come on, water signs.
I was gonna ask because everyone's gonna say later. Why did you bring up the signs?
We love the water signs. Yes.
Wow. So staying out of your feelings is actually a full-time job.
It's a full-time job.
It is. It's work.
It's real.
I'm a Cancer, so I get it.
I feel seen.
Yes.
You
get.
I'm not gonna get into
for
this.
real. So that's why that evolution was so essential, and I'm a happier and better person. But so coming out of that show, LP Drinks was always around, but my company really has a couple of services. So we do events. We consult on beverage programs and bars. We work with brands. We do accessibility modifications. We provide translation services.
What's accessibility modification?
Take DC, for instance. It has a huge deaf population. And so we help bars integrate plans and steps that they can take to ensure that their space is accessible to individuals who have disabilities, right? Which is amazing.
That's really cool.
It's so cool. And so I believe in subject matter experts. So a lot of the services that we offer are coming obviously right from me. We collaborate with a lot of organizations within the beverage sector who help us with some of the additional services that we offer. Healthy Pour as an example, with our health and wellness kind of offerings, which is really cool. And then we have programs. So we have Bodega Culture, which is basically an extension of a cocktail I made in episode 2, the Bodega cocktail. And it really embraces exactly what that is. Bodega. I mean, we're in New York, right?
Like, come
on.
About the bodega thing.
I was. I wanted to hear more about that, just because like we all know bodegas are like that thing and that girl for real. So it's real. Like anywhere you go in the world now, like you see like the impact of New York bodegas, and
it's kind of cool.
It is. I think it's dope.
I don't know. Never a better day to be ethnic, right? Like it's a cool thing now. I'm here for it.
I've seen. I've been to like even pop-ups in other places where they recreate the bodega.
Oh, really?
And they just did one in LA, and it's so funny because like you'll see them put the cat on the counter because that's the manager.
Gosh.
We all know the cat is the manager. And you have to have wrap snacks. Like you have to have the wrap snacks.
Those are newer edition though. Like if we're talking old school bodegas, we're talking pickle in a bag.
Pickle in a bag, yeah.
25-cent chips.
Pickle
25-cent sunflower
25-cent chips.
Yeah.
Do you remember
Huggies? The little drinks.
Do you remember the mayo sandwiches with ham and cheese?
Oh, see, I wasn't around for that.
Questionably on the counter for way too long.
But I do enjoy that you are taking so much of what you are and who you are and putting it into your branding. Yeah. When I seen your branding, I was like, ooh, I like that. There was a personal, like there was a bit of you in there. I seen the glasses and the afro. And I thought to myself, like, as a Black woman, I think it's so important to have your identity wrapped up in your branding or wherever you go. So I think like there's never going to be a question of who's running the show with your brand when they see it in the stores and stuff. What made you, I mean, obviously it was pride, right?
Yeah.
But we're creating that specific branding of the glasses and the afro. Like, what made you go like this has to be here? Like instead of just like a regular cocktail drink or something like that.
I was actually gifted that logo like long before the show came out. So I made my Instagram handle LP Drinks in I think like 2016. And this gentleman named Mac, who lives in DC, was like, I made something for you. And I was like, cool, what is it? And he was like, this logo, but I never really used it. And it wasn't until, and I can't recall exactly, but it wasn't until I really seriously took off with LP Drinks prior to the show that I was like, okay, I need a logo. This is perfect. And
shout out to him. That was nice.
Yeah, that was really cool. And it certainly has become basically a big part of my brand. It's me, right? And I think that's cool. It's funny. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I was never ashamed of being a Black person. I was never ashamed of being from the Bronx. But it's so interesting how like we look at the timeline or just like the present day and how people now appreciate that, right? And they want to be a part of that. And I think that's why bodega culture is so impactful. So its whole premise is like paying homage to the Puerto Rican diaspora. Puerto Ricans left Puerto Rico, came to New York, and they started bodegas.
And you're Puerto Rican.
Part Puerto Rican, yeah. But they started bodegas to support their families and have a livelihood. And New York, obviously, right? So two really very prominent components of what bodegas are. And I had people from like India messaging me like, hey, that's so cool, I love bodegas. And I'm like, what? There are bodegas in India? What's going on here? You know, like it was really cool. And it's that nostalgia, that lived experience, that like evoking emotion for me when I talk about my company. That's really what we try to do with every experience that we have with people. And I think that's really special.
Yeah. It was special for me to see that. I was like, that was the one thing. I mean, I probably could got excited about the drinks too, but I was like, that branding. So I'm someone crazy. I'm a visual person. So it really stood out to me. And I was like, that's beautiful. As a Black woman, I appreciate that. I like the little touches. So
and I would
it made me excited.
Yeah, like me too. I think what touched me is, I know off camera before the show, you told me that you're adopted. Yeah. And so I'm like, when you're doing these stories, and I was talking to our producer earlier and our director, Juanez, and I was saying, like, I feel like for me, art is about asking myself questions. And then other people, if the audience sees and they're asking themselves the same questions, like, good for them. But it's really like a personal thing at the beginning.
For sure.
When you're looking for your identity or talking about bodegas, and like, what part of yourself are you trying to connect to, or you're on a journey to find, or home, like what is it for you?
I think it's a lot less about, so it's funny, for a really long time, even like doing the ancestry DNA, all that stuff, it was like, okay, who am I? And now it's how can I allow people to be a part of who I am, right?
Who you know you are.
Who I know I am. Like the experiences that I've had. And I think that's powerful because like I got this really amazing experience to hang out in the Bronx a couple of weeks ago and just visit all the places that I grew up. And that nostalgia, man, I got so emotional and it was so cool. And I was like, wow, it's really, what an amazing experience to come back to all the places that mean so much to me and share that with people. And the second I did that, I was like, I want to keep doing that because exactly your point. That's who I know I am, right?
Yeah. You don't want to lose that part of yourself
exactly.
either.
Exactly. It's because I'm so proud to be, Afro-Latin. I'm so proud to be from the Bronx. I'm so proud to be, to have 7 siblings, all those things. And I think that those are really obviously unique and specific to me. But for me, embracing that hopefully allows others to be proud of who they are.
I think it's actually so key and crazy that you say this, as I feel like when you get this identity era that's just like, who am I? Who am I? Or trying to present to the world, this is who I am as an Afro-Latina or as a woman or as a gay person, whatever it is, you get away from, I feel like your childhood self when I was like, I know who I am. Like when you're a kid, you're like, I'm Bianca. Like, you know, and I had two sisters. I'd walk in the room and was like, I'm Bianca. Like my sister, you're Crystal, you're Treasure. Like we had such a keen sense of identity, and the older you get, the more you start asking, who am I really? You know, so I think to return to that place where you're like, this is who I am. And it's really, you know, it's a more complex, like, oh, you know, all these myriad of experiences. And I'm a part of a household with 7 children, but you're also just like, this is who I am. Like, this is the neighborhood I grew up in. This is my block. Like, it becomes a lot simpler at the same time. Like, what do you think about that?
I mean, when you're in a position where you're exposed to so much and there's so much noise happening around you and people competing with each other and just distraction, it does get lost, right? So it's like, how do we come back to that?
And drinks are your way.
Yeah, I think so. I think that they allowed me to connect with people in a very like natural way, which is kind of cool. Yeah.
Do you have an audio podcast? Are you looking to grow your audience? Partner with Prosper Digital TV, a virtual and full-service video production company. Visit www.prosperdigital.tv or call 718-622-0062 to get started today.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask you is about legacy. You are already kind of paving this path, and you so early on in your career, I can see you still have so much more to do. What does legacy like really mean to you with what you already built and what you want to continue to do?
Yeah, you know, this theme of legacy has come up a few times in the last like few interviews I've done. And I honestly haven't really thought about it prior, but I think that if I can be remembered for who I am and like very authentically, very genuinely, I think that's cool, right? Like I think if I can leave an impression, let me put it this way. There was a time in my career where I certainly was moving in the way I was moving because I was like, I want to be acknowledged as the best bartender in the world. And so when that part of me was like, when that part of me kind of left and I was like, I don't really care about that. What I care about is the work I'm doing. What I care about is the impact I'm making, whether that's raising money for charity, bringing awareness to a charity, whether that is coming back to the Bronx and being able to showcase local businesses and, you know, people who are doing amazing work. That work for me is so much more meaningful and so much more fulfilling. When you're grounded in your values, I think that you move in a way, in a manner where you don't have to question if you're doing the right thing, which I think is really powerful. It makes it easier to say no, right? It makes it more exciting to say yes. And so for me, when I think about what I've done and the way I'm moving and how comfortable I am with who I am, that my hope is that people see me for who I am, right? And my hope is that when I'm no longer here, that those are the conversations people continue to have.
Something I kind of want to come back to and, you know, go as deep as you want into this, but you mentioned twice, maybe 3 times your husband. And I think this is actually really key because a lot of what you said, like your confidence or asking critical questions during your career was because you had a partner. And I find like a lot of people underestimate how important that can be when trying to create like really big career moves. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, he does not agree with me and everything, and I kind of hate that but love that, right? Like I think it's a gift because I also don't want to be in a room of like people.
And
it's a hard thing to admit because in the moment I'm like, right? But what I realized is if I am surrounded by people who disagree with everything I say, and I used to be, then I'm not challenging myself. I don't think that I'm placing myself in a position to be a better version of myself. I want people who don't necessarily agree. I want them to explain why they don't agree. And I want to be able to reflect on that and figure out what the best move for me is. And I mean, my husband definitely does that, which I completely respect him for. And we've known each other for 9 years, and he's been that way since day one. And maybe that was the reason why we clicked, because he was the first person to be like, I don't agree with you, which I love, you know?
So you
and I think it's refreshing. And so I read something recently and it worded it perfectly. It's like the best gift we can give someone is honesty, right? Because even leaving a job, when they ask for that intimidation we feel when they are asking for input or honest feedback, you don't give it to them. They're not going to be able to fix what the problem is, right? And we get so angered and like mad and we leave, and it's like, okay, we'll funnel that into something positive that can hopefully evoke change. And I truly believe that even with the conflict, and I embrace conflict because I think it's essential, especially in the close relationships and friendships that we have. If I have an issue with a friend or a peer, I'm going to be honest with them about how I feel. Like, hey, you know, in this moment, I don't agree with what you said, and this is why. And we don't have to be in our feelings about it. We can speak extremely objectively. But I think honesty is really important, and it's not always easy. I've had some really hard conversations in the last 2 years, and reflecting back, I'm like, man, who is this person, you know? But it's important. It's important.
And I feel like honesty goes both ways, and that sometimes people see you as better than you are, or as like more capable than you see yourself. So even it's like your husband or, you know, any support system, people will be like, oh, you know, like, yeah, this is your critique and this is like conflict. But then people also being like, no, you're fully capable. And I think when you talk about like getting into something like Drink Masters of being like, try this, like you can carry everything, you could do everything.
Yeah, but I think that's why it's also like we have to humanize ourselves a bit more, but it's humanizing others too. Because like I'll have conversations with people now, like members of the beverage industry who like shake when they meet me because they're so excited or they're scared. But and they have
the Beyonce of drinks.
I love that. Oprah, Beyonce. Who are you, girl?
We working through Michelle Obama.
This is
Michelle Obama. You know,
from Syracuse.
I love it. Let's go.
You know, a little something.
something.
Yeah.
I think the thing that's interesting is, you know, we put people on pedestals, and so even the conversations I have with individuals is like I humanize myself. You know, I'm like, hey, what's up? I keep it very casual. I keep it very comfortable. I tell them how like excited I am to meet them, because truly I am. How appreciative I am for them, you know, coming out to meet me or whatever it may be. And then I usually just focus on them, ask them questions about who they are. And I think if we can humanize ourselves a bit more, make ourselves accessible, back to my husband, best advice he ever gave me was acknowledge in those moments when you're meeting people that you have to be on, right? So if you're not in the mood to like engage, you probably shouldn't go out, because that's their one opportunity that they get with you, right? And so acknowledging that if you're in a bad mood, like that's the impression they now have of you for the rest of your life,
of the idea of you,
or the idea, exactly.
Well, you never get a second chance to make a first impression, so it's important to know, like, just if you don't want to have that moment, just don't have that moment.
And so, I mean, I if I'm not the best version of myself, I'm not going out. But when I am out, I am taking the time to talk to individuals and to give them, you know, my time and my space. And I think that's important. But I think people are getting better at it. I do. I mean, I'm one person in a very big world, but I think the interactions and the conversations I've seen, even on social now, are allowing individuals to lean into the imperfect kind of elements and aspects of themselves.
The in between,
whether it's anxiety or depression or, you know, like whatever, right? And I think sharing that is important in whatever way you feel comfortable, right? But it's special.
I think sharing your truth is something people have to become more comfortable with, and I think that it's something that I have personally had to like work through. It's just like, how do I just create the boundaries within myself, like telling my truth to people, but then also like keeping something for myself. And I think that like once you're like, that's why I said I don't know if I could do reality TV anymore.
I always tell people I'm trying to be transparent, not see through.
That's it. That's it. Because once it's too much. Like even with social media, I'm like,
y'all can have a little.
Y'all can get a little bit. Like
I'll do a soft launch, but you're not gonna see my man, and I don't have one.
And you don't need to, you know. I think that's a really good point too. Like I don't post everything on social.
Love that for you.
But I think it's important. I think that there are parts of my life that are meant to be for me. And that's just the way it is, you know. And respect. But yeah, that's a testament. Social media is not real, y'all. Just saying.
I want us to get into what we call our final nugget.
Wait. Before that, I actually want to totally pivot if I'm allowed.
Yeah.
I really have a question. Okay, so I'm Muslim and I don't drink. Even though when I was 21, I dated a bar owner for a bit. And so I got really into like high-end alcohol. I want to ask about the world of mocktails and sort of like how you feel about you know, and it's a loaded question, like kind of the toxicity of bar culture, because obviously like alcoholism, things like that, but how fancy and expensive this world of like non-alcoholic beverages is getting. Just because you're the expert, I just want you to speak on it really quick.
We'll need a whole other episode to talk about it. No.
You don't have to come back, but
please
give
us
a little snippet.
It's an interesting space, and obviously I think that the increase we saw happened right around COVID. People are genuinely taking better care of themselves. And I think also they are exploring other types of recreational activity as well. So we don't see as many individuals drinking alcohol. With that being said, we do have a lot of bar programs now integrating non-alcoholic beverage programs. I always, when I'm like teaching bartenders, place a huge emphasis on understanding classic cocktails and making sure you can make a good non-alcoholic beverage. Because if you can't make a lemonade, how do you expect to make a cocktail? I mean, it's the truth, right?
On it. I've had so much bad lemonade.
And there's some really good ones. It's understanding with that lack of alcohol, what we need to incorporate in a serve to make up for like lack of texture, lack of complexity, lack of flavor. And there are many, many, many things we can do. Simply put, concentrated syrups, concentrated tea infusions, oversteeped tea to have more tannin integration, things like aquafaba and egg white for texture, things like soda water, you know, so making lemonade, topping it off with soda water. And so those are like baseline tips that I give, but that world is expanding constantly. Non-alcoholic spirits are pricey. I do believe they should be, because the process is just as intuitive as it is to make alcohol, if not more. And if you're going into a bar and the expectation is, because I'm an adult who's ordering a non-alcoholic beverage, and the expectation is your experience is similar to someone who is drinking alcohol, but you get no buzz, you're not paying for buzz, you're paying for the experience. So I think we have to change our mindset.
And I think you're paying for the fact that so much of American recreation is surrounding bars. Like for young people, like other countries like France or literally anywhere else in the world, a cafe is open till 2 or 3 a.m. Like here, it's like bar culture. It almost forces you to, you know, recreate around alcohol.
It's different here too. The way that we treat alcohol here is very different than it is in Europe. But I do think change your mindset about that approach, right? You're paying for the experience, not the buzz. Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm over here like, can I just get a Truly? That's
a whole conversation.
I know. So it's basically just like a seltzer, like a spiked seltzer.
You should try Sippany. It's delicious.
I can't wait to try it.
Listen,
we're gonna try. Yeah, you why you didn't bring us one,
girl?
I don't know.
Next time.
I'll
pay for it, but I'm gonna still call you.
I'm the girl who's like the low cal. I don't like to drink my calories, and I think that's what I'm still like trying to like find a balance of like when I drink, I'm not a big drinker either. Like I am sparingly socially. But when I do, my friends are like, you're so annoying. I'm like, child, I don't want to drink my calories.
I'm such a kid. I'll drink Coca-Cola, iced tea, lemonade.
The best advice I can give is be informed on what you're consuming, because there are really good products out there that are in cans.
Yeah. Well, I've been actually this year alone, I've been doing a lot of events, and I've been seeing, but there's always a request for like non-alcoholic alternatives. And there's so many brands now that are allowing everyone to have an experience. They've even specialized some towards pregnant women, which I think is amazing. There's all types of rosés now and all these different things. So I'm like, okay, y'all better get into it.
Sure. Where can we get Sippany?
Sippany can be brought at several places all over the city in New York, and other states as well. So if you go to sippany.com and you look up like where to find us, you can purchase it online as well.
Is there going to be a time where we can buy it in a Whole Foods, or like are you trying to scale to that point?
We are in Fresh Direct. We are available at several Whole Foods. Yeah.
Oh, you're in Whole Foods.
Yeah, and we just launched in Disney. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. So
wait, that's
exciting.
Incredible.
Yeah, so exciting. Yeah, the team's working really hard, so we're really excited about it.
Wow.
I'm gonna give you 5 sentences, and you just give me. You can do one word or more. So the path to success is paved with
patience.
No, I agree. My mind is
full.
The mixologist's greatest tool is her or his
creativity.
Like that. I wish the world was more
kind.
Tomorrow I will be
In Boston.
Wait, literal?
Yeah, literally. Graduation's right.
Yeah, graduation season. Gotta go celebrate the sister's graduation.
LP, it has been such a pleasure having you on the Nugget.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your wisdom, and congratulations on actually everything. We're going to watch all of your Drink Master episodes, and I might even take a little sip for you, which I'm going to do that for everybody.
Right.
I'm going to drink me some
We'll make
sippity.
you a non-alcoholic beverage too.
Wait, actually?
Can I get that? Can I get the low cal
Wait,
non-alcoholic?
No, I get free stuff. You trying to get free stuff too. Okay.
We'll make it happen. We'll make it happen.
Thank you. Send those over.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Nugget. LP, if you could tell us where to find you, where to support you, Sippany, LP Drinks.
Yeah, absolutely. So lpdrinks.org is my website, and LP Drinks DC on Instagram. And you can find Sippany and all the other ventures I have going on there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's a wrap.
Awesome.